I didn't mean to call him. I was standing in the kitchen on a Thursday evening, tired from a long day, phone in hand, scrolling for my sister's name. Her name starts with M. So does his. They sit right next to each other in my recent calls because I'd texted him that morning about dinner. I pressed the wrong name without looking. Simple as that. We'd been together for 3 years at that point. Not a short relationship, long enough to have a drawer at each other's places, long enough to stop explaining every small absence, long enough to have built a kind of shared trust that I had never interrogated because it had never asked to be interrogated. He worked in sales. The nature of his job meant irregular hours, client dinners, after-work drinks that occasionally stretched past 9. None of that had ever felt suspicious. It had just been his job. His phone rang twice. He didn't pick up. I waited for the beep and started leaving what I thought was a message for my sister. "Hey, just calling to see if you're free Saturday, call me back." Then I pulled the phone away to hang up. That's when I heard it. I hadn't ended the call fast enough. The voicemail was still recording. And in the 43 seconds that followed, I heard something that changed everything. His voice. Relaxed, close, laughing. The kind of laugh I used to hear from him in the early days of our relationship, easy and open, the one that had slowly disappeared from our apartment over the past year without me finding the right word for its absence. And underneath his voice, another. A woman's. Not distant or professional. Comfortable. Close to the phone. Like she was sitting right next to him. I stood in the kitchen without moving. The voicemail cut off at maximum recording length, 43 seconds, and I stayed right there holding the phone in both hands for what felt like a very long time. He was supposed to be at a team dinner. He'd mentioned it Wednesday morning while pouring his coffee, barely looking up. Team dinner Thursday, might be late. I'd nodded. We'd been together 3 years at that point. I didn't interrogate routine announcements. I'd learned not to read things into every small absence. I trusted the patterns we'd built because I had no clear reason not to. But now I had 43 seconds of something I could not explain away. I did not call him back. I made dinner. I sat in front of the television and watched something I did not absorb. I rehearsed explanations in my head, a coworker, a speaker on a call he'd accidentally left running, background noise from a public restaurant that just sounded close. I gave every explanation a fair hearing. None of them held. He came home at 10:40. He kissed me on the cheek, said the dinner ran long, poured himself a glass of water, leaned on the counter. Normal as anything. I asked how it went. "Good food," he said. "Good crowd. Long week but worth it." We talked about nothing for 20 minutes and then he went to bed. I sat up until 2 in the morning. Not crying. Just thinking. The next morning, while he was in the shower, I transferred the voicemail to my laptop. I have always kept his voicemails. It started in the early days of our relationship when he traveled for work and I liked having his voice archived. A small, private habit. So I knew exactly which folder. I dropped the new file in and listened with headphones, volume all the way up, in the silence of the kitchen. 43 seconds. His laugh. Her voice sang something I couldn't fully make out, but I caught the phrase last time and a small, warm laugh of her own. The clink of glasses. Then recording silence until the file ended. I played it 4 times. Then I closed the laptop and went to work. Over the following 2 weeks, I paid attention differently. Not in a way that spiraled or consumed me, not in a way he could notice. I simply watched more carefully. I noticed when his phone was face down on the coffee table. I noticed when he stepped into the hallway to take calls. I paid attention to the pattern of his team events, because now that I was actually counting, they seemed to fall on Thursdays with a regularity I hadn't registered before. On the second Thursday after the voicemail, he mentioned another team dinner. I said nothing. But that evening I called the restaurant he had mentioned months earlier as his company's standard venue for client events. I asked whether they had any record of a group booking under his last name, or a corporate reservation, on that first Thursday. The woman checked twice. Nothing. No reservation under his name. No large group booking for that evening at all. I noted that in the same document where I'd been quietly recording everything else. By the end of those 2 weeks, I had the voicemail file, the call log confirming the accidental recording, 2 consecutive Thursdays with team dinners that left no trace in the places he claimed, and a restaurant with no record of his presence. I hadn't gone through his phone. I hadn't followed him. I hadn't hired anyone or installed anything or done any of the things that get called invasive. Everything I had came from a misdial and a few careful observations. I wasn't angry. That surprised me when I noticed it. I was very, very clear. I texted him on a Friday evening at 6:30, "Can we talk when you get home?" Anyone who has spent real time in a serious relationship knows what that message means. The weight of it. He came home at 8 with hesitation in his step and a careful expression on his face that told me he understood something was waiting. I had my laptop open on the kitchen table. I pressed play on the recording. 43 seconds of his voice, his laugh, her voice, the wine glasses. He didn't say anything for a long moment. I watched him try to build an explanation. He opened his mouth twice and closed it again. There wasn't an angle that worked. The recording was what it was. It was his voice. It was his laugh. It was a sound that didn't match any version of a team dinner. "It's not what it sounds like," he said finally. The oldest sentence in the world, offered by people in impossible situations for exactly as long as impossible situations have existed. I told him what it sounded like. He tried to adjust the narrative. I asked about the restaurant, the reservation that didn't exist, the Thursdays that kept coming around. He stopped adjusting. By 9 in the evening, we were no longer having the voicemail conversation. We were having a different conversation, the real one, the one that had apparently been living underneath our 3 years for 4 months. Quieter. Harder. Honest in the specific, devastating way things become honest when there is nowhere left to go. He admitted it. Not with details I needed to hear, not with explanations I could accept, but clearly and without the defensive posturing he'd started with. I asked how long. He said 4 months. I did not fall apart. I want to address that directly, because I think people expect a specific kind of reaction in a moment like that, something loud, something shattered. I felt neither. What I felt was a strange internal settling. Like something that had been at a slightly wrong angle for months had finally clicked into its correct position. Painful. But correct. In those 2 weeks of quiet attention, I had already begun to grieve. I had already sat with the version of events that turned out to be true. By the time he said the words out loud, there was nothing left to shatter. There was only the task of ending things with honesty and care and the dignity that 3 years together deserved. He moved out the following Sunday. He took his clothes, his guitar, the French press he'd bought the year before we moved in together. I kept the apartment. I kept the voicemail file in the folder on my laptop, next to the messages he left me when he was away on work trips in 2023, the happy ones from when we were first figuring out how to be together. They're all still there. I think about the version of me who hung up just a fraction of a second faster. Who never heard any of it. Who kept making dinner and nodding along to Thursday updates and attributing his slow distance to work stress and the long flat middle of a relationship. I'm glad that's not who I became. Affairs have a gravity to them. They pull toward their own exposure, eventually. The misdial just compressed the timeline. Instead of another year of something being slightly wrong, I had 43 seconds and a very clear picture. It's strange what an accidental phone call can do. If you've ever had a small, unlikely moment, a wrong number, a notification you weren't meant to see, a receipt in a jacket pocket, that unlocked a truth you'd been circling without naming, drop it in the comments. Subscribe. New story every week.